Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Got a fun review today. In 1942, Fawcett's second most popular superhero after Captain Marvel, of course, smashed his way onto the silver screen as Spy Smasher. Now, the Spy Smasher serial was made by Republic Pictures, kind of the kings of old serials, and it is considered one of the best ones ever made. 12 chapters, which is generally my favorite length for one of these things. Because, when it goes 15 chapters, it just seems like they're just sort of trying to find something to fill the time. 12 works out really, really nicely. It was directed by William Whitney, a prolific director of serials and B-movies, who later moved into directing for television, made his last film in 1982. Writers for the serial included Ronald Davidson, Norman S. Hall, William Lively, Joseph O'Donnell, Joseph Poland, all veterans of serials and westerns. And remember that serials and all those B-westerns are really sort of the origin of the American action film. That's really where it all starts. Big emphasis on stunts and on fights. That's where all that stuff comes from. Now, this serial had a budget of $153,000, which would be about $3 million in today's dollars. It was the most expensive movie serial made that year. Spy Smasher first appeared in Whiz Comics number 2 in 1940, along with Captain Marvel, both of them created by Bill Parker and C.C. Beck. Now here, he is Alan Armstrong, who becomes a mystery man to fight Axis spies in the United States, and in particular, a spy called The Mask. His cool gimmick is the gyro sub, a vehicle that could fly and travel underwater. He eventually becomes Crime Smasher after the end of World War II, although there were plenty of Soviet spies he could have been smashing, so at any rate. But he managed to last in that form until about 1948. So he had a relatively short career in superherodom. Now, interesting to me that Captain Marvel made the leap into movies about a year after he was introduced into comics. Spy Smasher took him 2 years. It would take Batman 4 years and Superman 10. And that probably means Fawcett was more willing to play ball with the studios more than anything else. In other words, DC probably was holding out for too much money, which is what I've kind of heard with the serial, The Mysterious Dr. Satan, that was supposed to be a Superman serial. DC kind of pulled out of it, and then they had to make up a new character real quick. So that's probably what it really means. But point is, those Fawcett characters did make it into live action before the DC ones did. Well, our serial stars Kane Richmond as Spy Smasher and his alternate identity of Alan Armstrong, probably best known for playing Lamont Cranston, i.e., The Shadow, in the Shadow films that they made back then. He also played Brick Bradford in another serial. Brick Bradford was a DC character. He left the business in about 1948. Probably a smart move for the guy. Eve Corby is played by Marguerite Chapman, former model and a former telephone operator, actually. This movie was sort of her break and led to much better roles, including films that she made with Edward G. Robinson and George Sanders. Now, Eve Corby is the daughter of Admiral Corby, played by Sam Flint. Both of those characters are taken from the comic books. They are allies of Spy Smasher. Now, Spy Smasher's main foe in the comics is actually also the bad guy in the serial. A rare thing, actually. You don't see traditional Batman villains, for example, in the Batman serials, but here we do. And it is The Mask, played by Hans Schum, a German-born actor who worked in Hollywood and got plenty of work during World War II playing German bad guys. Tristram Coffin plays Drake, another veteran of serials and B-movies. He would play Jeff King in the King of the Rocketmen serial a few years later. Well, our story begins in Paris under German domination. Spy Smasher has infiltrated the German headquarters and is searching through their papers when he is discovered and attacked. And this, of course, leads to precisely what you want in old serials, a fight and lots of stunts. This is an area where Spy Smasher excels Great fight scenes, great stunts. The stunts were under the supervision of the great Yakima Canute, and the excellent Lydecker brothers were in charge of the special effects. Republic was always just a cut above everybody else in those respects. Well, unfortunately, this action scene is a quick one, as a German officer captures Spy Smasher and has him thrown into the Gestapo dungeon. And in the dungeon, he is tortured. While the Germans look on, they want a confession that he's a secret agent for the U.S. government, but they cannot break him. They bring in Captain Devon, French Provost Marshal, and ask if he knows the man before them. He says he does not, but it now falls on his shoulders to shoot him as a spy. Now, he refuses to execute a man without a trial, but the Germans threaten to execute 20 French people if he does not. He looks at the man and says, you see, what I have to do. And so he is led away. Meanwhile, the Germans reveal that the paper he stole contains Hitler's orders to the mask, part of their plan to flood America with counterfeit dollars. So there's your setup for the overarching plot of ratsy shenanigans in America that Spy Smasher is going to have to stop. Well, the next morning, Spy Smasher is apparently killed by firing squad. Oh, and he refuses the blindfold, of course, because that's what heroes do. But it's a trick engineered by his friend and ally, Captain Devon, who helps him escape back to America. It's a nice opening. We have a little action. We see, his own heroism. We see the threat that he faces. We get to see Captain Devon, the loyal Frenchman who has to put up with the Germans and all that kind of stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Really sets us off in the right direction. Now, the action, of course, is not over yet. On a train rolling across America, Armstrong is recognized by one of the Germans who is present for his execution, the head of the Gestapo in Paris, and a fight ensues. But in the middle of it, we see Spy Smasher on the roof of the train. Well, how can that be? This is where we discover that Alan has a twin brother, Jack, who will aid him through the rest of the serial. Now, Jack is not, from what I can tell, a character from the comics. So they made that up for this movie. I wonder if it's because this was a story that they already had kind of written and they just adapted it to Spy Smasher. And so they said, well, we got a twin in that one. We'll just make it a twin in this one. It's possible they did do that sometimes in adapting serials. Well, Spy Smasher, of course, jumps in and he saves Jack and throws the Ratsy from the train. And in this split screen, we see that his brother Alan is Spy Smasher. He explains that he thought Alan was dead. Everybody thought Alan was dead from a recent plane crash in France. So we get this little data dump here. It also brings up another factor in comic book movies. Do they get it right? Well, not entirely in this one, as I mentioned before. No twin brother in the comics, but they do pretty good in this one. Oh, we don't get the gyro sub either. Okay, yeah. That's going to be kind of expensive. There is a submarine in it, though. But overall, they do a pretty good job with the costume and with some of the characters. So not a bad adaptation. Back then they were doing them really just for kids. They didn't think it really mattered that much. They still have that attitude these days. Well, when Spy Smasher learns that the Gestapo man was headed to Lakeside Junction and that this is the residence of Admiral Corby, a retired admiral, recently made commissioner of naval intelligence, he decides that he must be their target. They need to act fast, so they decide to get off at the next stop and charter an airplane so they can get there. Well, of course, the heavies beat the Armstrong boys there, but just barely. They see the thugs attacking the admiral's driver, so Spy Smasher decides to bail out of the airplane so he can get into the action quicker. Lots of cool 1940s stuff here. Airplanes, parachutes, all that kind of stuff. Remember, at the time, this is sort of high tech. This is really, really happening stuff. We maybe take it for granted now. We get some cool stunts here as well. Spy Smasher, seeing the bad guys, he climbs up on the roof of the house, leaps off on top of one of the guys. And then we also get a little bit of judo. You can see him flipping the guy over there. So a lot of great stuff to fire a kid's imagination. through this whole sequence. It's followed by a gunfight, and the thugs, in fleeing, drop the attaché case that they were trying to steal that holds the Admiral's papers. When Alan heads into the Admiral's house with the papers, he is greeted as Jack by Eve. And this will be used throughout the film, you know, as a way for Alan to sort of hide his identity and be in two places at once. And of course, Eve is obviously like kind of a fiance of Jack's. Well, the papers are a mine chart for Shark Bay, which we can assume is right next to the junction, Petticoat Junction. Spy Smasher figures the mask is going to sneak the counterfeit money into the U.S. through Shark Bay, and thus he needed the mine chart so he could avoid, you know, blowing up. They decide to investigate Shark Bay that night. Now, we're dealing with Germans in this movie, so we need to have a good U-boat, and we do, in fact, have one. It may, again, be lost on us now, but things like this were, again, very high-tech, very up-to-date, and therefore very, very cool in this period. The mask uses a video phone to contact Drake and his thugs. Again, consider this the equivalent of holographic computer stuff in the MCU. I mean, this would be super cutting edge kind of stuff that I really didn't even quite exist then. And it's only really existed now in the last, you know, decade or two. Well, naturally, Spy Smasher and his bro get in the way of Drake and company, picking up the counterfeit money drop. It's really a float. It's in these buoys that they pop out of the torpedo tubes. There's a boat chase. There's more gunplay. And ultimately, the bad guys escape by dropping a net into the water to entangle Spy Smasher's propeller. Fortunately, he and his brother do get the evidence they need, one of the floating buoys with the counterfeit money in it. Well, the bad guys get away, like I said, but they also leave an additional clue behind. One of them has a habit of tying the plastic wrapper of his cigars into a knot and then dropping it wherever he happens to be. So he's not only a traitor to America, he's also a litterer. The next scene shows the villains entering their hideout, an underground cavern that they reach through the sewers, through like a trapdoor in this like armored car looking thing. They pop open the trapdoor, go down through the manhole, etc. Very, very cool stuff. The cigar wrapper, though, that we mentioned before, leads Spy Smasher and Jack to the Acme Cafe. So it was a bad clue to leave, which connects with the hideout, which leads to a fight, of course, but also a very cool special effect as flames from a fuel tank that has been lit on fire roar down a tunnel close behind Spy Smasher as he's escaping on one of those little pump cars. Would not be a serial without a cliffhanger, right? And so ends chapter 1 of Spy Smasher, with 11 exciting chapters to follow. In Spy Smasher, you get a solid story. Not too much runaround, as you sometimes do get in these old movie serials where it's a lot of back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. This one felt like it had a little more of a solid plot to it, and also fairly decent dialogue and a pretty good leading man in Kane Richmond to deliver it. And again, it's pretty comic accurate to Spy Smasher, at least in the look and the feel of the thing. On top of that, you get some really good fight scenes in this one. Good stunts, good special effects. The fight scenes sometimes are in really interesting places. There's one where they're, I think it was almost like a construction site or a place. Maybe it was just an old factory, but it has all these platforms. People are jumping back and forth on the platforms and stuff. Really good stuff. Something Republic was known for. It is, like I said, rightly considered one of the best of the old movie serials. Now, you can find this serial on YouTube and on Tubi. Unfortunately, neither of them have a really great print. And at this point, I don't know that we're going to be getting like really cleaned up movie serial prints in the future, unless it becomes something that people can kind of do on their own, you know, like using a sort of AI type tool. So, you know, it's watchable, but it's not the best in the world. There's also, in the 60s, they took the serial and chopped it up to make a movie called Spy Smasher Returns. You can find that on Tubi as well if you just want something a bit quicker. I want to say it's like an hour and a half long. I mean, otherwise, it's 12 chapters, each one about 20 minutes. So you can find this out there. I say give it a try. Maybe even try to find the Spy Smasher comics. They might be online somewhere, or you could probably find a collection somewhere out there, because it's really, really, really cool stuff and well worth watching and a lot of fun. And that'll do it for my review of Spy Smasher from 1942. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Maybe think about subscribing. Maybe share with a friend. That would be very cool. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there, and I will see you hopefully again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.